My brother Marcus is a CEO. I still had to Google what a P&L actually was. He's not just ahead of me, he's 3 levels ahead, on a ladder I didn't even know existed until I started paying attention. Growing up, it never felt like a competition. He just seemed to move through the world differently, like he was always operating one room ahead of everyone else. It wasn't until I actually looked closely that I realized it wasn't magic, and it wasn't luck. It was a sequence, a specific set of levels, each one requiring a completely different skill than the one before it, so I decided to climb it. Every level Marcus already passed, I'm going to walk through myself, one by one, until the gap between us closes. This is every level of a CEO, level 1, the Executor. This is where I started, and honestly, it's where almost everyone starts. You get a task, you do the task, someone checks your work. That's the whole job. No real decisions, no real ownership, just execution. There's a strange comfort at this level actually. Someone else has already figured out what needs to happen. Your only responsibility is to do your piece well and on time. Marcus started here too, a long time ago, but by the time I was catching up to this level, he was already 3 levels past it. At this stage, the only skill that matters is doing what you're told, well and consistently, without needing to be reminded twice. It's not glamorous. Nobody puts excellent task executor on a business card, but everyone who eventually runs something first had to prove they could just get something done, reliably, without drama, over and over again until it stopped being impressive and started being expected. Level 2, the self-manager. The first real shift happens quietly. Nobody's checking your work every 5 minutes anymore. You're trusted to manage your own output, your own deadlines, your own priorities, without someone standing over your shoulder. This sounds small, but it's the first taste of real independence, and a lot of people get stuck right here because managing yourself is genuinely a different skill than just following instructions. It requires you to notice your own mistakes before someone else points them out. It requires you to prioritize when nobody's telling you what matters most today. Marcus told me once that this was the level where he actually started thinking like he belonged in the room, instead of just waiting to be told what to do next. I didn't understand what he meant until I got here myself. There's a specific moment where you stop asking permission for things you're clearly capable of deciding on your own, and something shifts. Level 3, the people leader. This is the hardest jump on the entire ladder, and almost nobody warns you about it. Managing your own work is one thing. Managing someone else's work is a completely different skill, and it comes with a very specific kind of anxiety, delegation anxiety. You have to hand off something you know you could do faster yourself, and trust someone else to do it their way, even when their way isn't your way. I froze here longer than I want to admit. I kept taking things back, kept redoing what someone else had already finished, telling myself it was faster that way. It wasn't faster, it was just more comfortable, because comfort and control feel like the same thing when you haven't learned to separate them yet. Marcus said the same thing happened to him. The first time he had to let someone else's version of good enough actually be good enough and walk away from it without checking 3 more times. Level 4, the function owner. This is the level where you stop just managing people and start owning an entire function, a budget, a department, a real slice of the business with real consequences attached to your decisions. The stakes change here in a way that's hard to describe until you feel it. It's no longer just about whether your team gets their tasks done. It's about whether the numbers underneath those tasks actually add up, and whether the choices you make this quarter still make sense next quarter. This is also coincidentally exactly where Marcus was standing at the start of this video, 3 levels ahead of me, running a piece of a company like it was second nature. Reaching this level myself didn't feel like catching up to him. It felt like finally understanding what he'd been talking about at family dinners for years, when he'd mentioned budgets and headcount and quarterly targets like they were simple facts of life instead of the complicated balancing act they actually are. Level 5, the cross-functional thinker. This is the level most people quietly plateau at, and it's easy to see why. Up until now, you've been optimizing your own lane, your team, your budget, your department's numbers. At this level, you have to start thinking about how your decisions affect every other department, not just your own numbers, but the whole system underneath the company. A decision that looks perfect for your team can quietly create a problem 3 departments away, and at this level, that's now your responsibility to see coming. It requires a kind of thinking most jobs never actually train you to do, because most jobs are specifically designed to keep you focused on one lane. Marcus called this the level where you stop being good at your job and start being useful to the entire company. It's also the level where he pulled further ahead of me than at any other point in this whole climb. This was the level that took me the longest to actually get through. Level 6, the executive team builder. At this level, you're not managing individual contributors anymore, you're leading other leaders. That requires an entirely different kind of trust, because now your job is less about doing and more about building a team of people who can make good decisions without you in the room. You have to get comfortable with the fact that the people underneath you will sometimes solve problems differently than you would have, and that's not a failure of leadership. That's the entire point of leadership at this level. This is the level right before the top, and it's also where I finally started to feel the gap between me and Marcus actually shrinking, level by level, instead of just watching it from a distance. For the first time in this whole climb, it felt less like chasing him and more like walking beside him. The final level. The CEO. This is where Marcus has been standing this entire video, and this is where the climb finally puts us on the same step. Being CEO isn't really about the title. It's about owning the full outcome of the company, good or bad, with nobody above you to check the work. There's no one left to hand the hard decision to. Every earlier skill, execution, self-management, delegation, function ownership, cross-functional thinking, team leadership, all has to work together at once, under pressure, without a script. Reaching it didn't feel like beating my brother. It felt like finally understanding exactly what he'd been carrying this whole time, quietly, every single day, long before I ever noticed the weight of it. The big reveal. Here's the thing I didn't expect going into this. Marcus's head start was completely real, but it was never actually unbeatable. The gap wasn't some fixed permanent distance between two different kinds of people, the kind of gap you're either born on the right side of or you're not. It was 7 learnable levels, and every single one of them had a specific skill attached to it that I could actually go learn, one at a time in order. The ladder was always climbable. I just hadn't started climbing it yet, and once I did, the distance between us stopped being about talent and started being about time. The final lesson. If you're watching this and you've got someone in your life who feels 3 steps ahead of you, a sibling, a friend, a coworker, a boss, here's the thing worth remembering. The distance isn't fixed, it's just levels, and levels are learnable. The skill that gets you promoted at one level is rarely the same skill that gets you promoted at the next one, and knowing that in advance is most of the advantage. Most people don't fail to close the gap because they're incapable, they fail because nobody ever showed them the levels existed in the first place. Marcus and I are standing on the same step now. That doesn't mean the climbing stops. It just means the next ladder starts somewhere else, further up, out of view for now. If you've got someone 3 steps ahead of you right now, that gap has a name, and it has levels. Go find them. There's another hidden system waiting in the next video.